You're listening to All Things Sports with Mike Davis.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? Glad you can join me for another podcast of All Things Sports with Mike Davis. I thank you for including my podcast into your day. If you're listening on Spotify, follow the podcast. If you're on YouTube, please go ahead, comment, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Go to the Facebook page to get in contact with the show for any comments or any suggestions. I won't take up much more of your time. Let's get into it. All right. So I'm not going to waste time. I'm just going to jump right into it. I did want to talk about what I'm watching on television. If you follow the podcast, you know that I like to talk about some of the movies I've recently seen or a show that I'm currently watching right now, Snowfall. But there's some big business to handle right now. So I will save that other stuff for another podcast. So recently I was online and I saw something that said they were talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they were saying how Mike Tomlin has some bad losses in the playoffs. And what I wanted to know is Mike Tomlin failing the Pittsburgh Steelers? So some of these guys, I'm not going to lie, I chuckled. I had a little laugh when I saw some of the people that he had lost to. And I had to go back to those games and I had to see what happened in those games, why he lost those games. So one of the losses were back in 2007 when the Steelers lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars 31-29. They were 10-6, I believe. They were the AFC North. Excuse me. They were the AFC North Division champions with a 10-6 record that season. That was the first year of Mike Tomlin's head coaching career, losing in the first round to the Jaguars. And the Jaguars were a pretty decent team that year, but they were quarterbacked by David Garrard. I haven't heard from David. I haven't heard that name in quite some time. It's been a while. So I wanted to see what David Garrard did in this game. Oh, wow. Let's just say that the Jaguars won in spite of David Garrard. David Garrard's numbers. He was 9 of 21 passing. He only threw for 140 yards, threw 2 interceptions, sacked 4 times. He had a QBR rating of 41. All right. Now, on Pittsburgh's side, I thought Pittsburgh played a good game. When you go back and you see how the game played out, the problem was, and this will do it to you every time. This is why coaches preach about protecting the football and not turning it over. Roethlisberger, 3 picks. He was sacked 6 times. And the Pittsburgh offense that day, the run game was non-existent. They had no run game whatsoever. The difference in this game was a pick 6 by Roethlisberger. A pick 6. You take that pick 6 away, Pittsburgh, they win the game and they move on into the second round of the playoffs. So, yeah, that was the real difference in that game. You know, it was a turnover fest. It wasn't great quarterbacking by both teams. But, yeah, I would consider that a bad loss. Yeah, that's a bad loss for Mike Tomlin. Difference in that game was a pick 6 thrown by Roethlisberger. All right, now we go to this game, the next game. Excuse me. You have the Broncos, who are 8-8. And I'm pretty sure you all remember this game too, because I remember this game very well. Steelers 12-4. Okay. Now, here's where the game was lost for Pittsburgh. The Broncos scored 20 unanswered points in the second quarter. 20 unanswered. Now, look, when you look at Tebow's final stats, his yardage and, you say, wow, Tebow was pretty decent in that game. He wasn't that bad. Okay. Tim Tebow's final numbers: 10 of 21, 316 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Now, remember, he had the long throw to Thomas to win the game in overtime. So if you take that away, Tim Tebow was only 9 of 20 for 236 yards, 1 touchdown. The yardage is not that bad. I'm not mad, at the yardage. Yardage passing for a guy who really is not a passer, it's not that bad. Not that bad. This was more of a defensive game, but unfortunately, in overtime, the Broncos completed the longest scoring play in NFL overtime playoff history, and we all know that the Steelers ended up losing that game to the Denver Broncos. So, yeah, that was pretty bad. Also, I want to go back to, I didn't mention this, but before the Broncos game, remember I just mentioned how the Jaguars beat them in the playoffs. So again, Pittsburgh faced Jacksonville again in the playoffs later on. I believe this is 2017. I believe, I could be wrong, but that season they lost to Blake Bortles not once but twice. The Jaguars ended up beating them 45-42 in the second round of the playoffs. And the game was closer than it really was. The score 45-42, you think, oh, it was a shootout between Pittsburgh and Jacksonville. The game really wasn't that close until later on. And it wasn't like it was great quarterbacking by Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles was 14 of 24, 214 yards passing with 1 touchdown. And he ran also for 35 yards on 5 carries. Now, that Jaguars team was built on defense and a power running game with Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette had a great day. He got over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns on 25 carries. Jacksonville jumped out to a 28-7 lead. Now, again, just like in the Mike Tomlin's first playoff meeting with Jacksonville, the difference was the pick 6. Now, again, here we have turnovers playing a factor, and Jacksonville, they benefited from 2 key defensive turnovers. You had an interception by linebacker Miles Jack, and that set up an 18-yard scoring run by Fournette, and then you had a 50-yard fumble return for a touchdown by linebacker Telvin Smith. So I don't put turnovers on coaches. That's not something a coach can. It's not something that he has any control over. So the Jacksonville losses really came down to protecting the ball. Pittsburgh was unable to do that. I don't put that on Tomlin. Now, he might have had some bad game plans going into the game because, like I said, in this game, Jacksonville jumped out to a 28-7 lead. And the same thing in the first playoff game against Jacksonville. They got out to a big lead with turnovers. And it's hard to play catch up in the NFL, especially in the playoffs. It's hard to do that. Now, everyone wants to know, has Tomlin failed the Pittsburgh Steelers? And I'm going to say that No, he hasn't failed the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think so. Look, what I've learned is Steelers fans, they are spoiled. He's been to 2 Super Bowls in a league that is full of parity. Now, if you fire Mike Tomlin, who are you going to get? You going to get Adam Gase? Are you going to get another retread coach, who's done nothing in the league? Are you going to go get Mike McCarthy when the Cowboys finally fire him? When you get a coach that wins, you keep that coach. Now, I do love the fact that the Steelers, they don't go through coaches because everyone isn't qualified to be a head coach in the NFL. Don't believe me? Go look at Hugh Jackson. Go look at Jim Moore Jr. Don Shula's son. I forget his name. Remember when he coached the Bengals? Go get him. I don't even know if he's coaching anymore. Go get North Turner. Great coordinator. Horrible head coach. I think he had a great season one year in San Diego. That was about it. Look, Mike Tomlin has won. Try being a Falcons fan, and then you have a case for searching for a new head coach. So, Steelers fans, be happy with what you have. And look, I have no quarrels with Mike Tomlin. I think he's done a good job. The man, 14 years as a head coach, 9 times in the playoffs, 7 division titles, 3 AFC title games, 2 Super Bowl appearances, youngest coach to win a Super Bowl at 36 years old. His head coaching record is 145 and 78 and 1 tie. 8-8 playoff record. Please give Mike Tomlin a round of applause. I would love him to coach my team. That's all I'm saying. Steelers fans, you got to coach. Stop complaining. Stop whining. Mike Tomlin is the guy for the job. Hey, look, that's all I got for you today, folks. I thank you for including my podcast into your day. If you're listening on Spotify, follow the podcast. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, comment, like, all that good stuff. Go to the Facebook page to get in contact with the show for any comments or suggestions. You've been listening to All Things Sports with Mike Davis. And remember, it's your world. I'm just giving my opinion. I'm out. Peace.
You're listening to All Things Sports with Mike Davis.